Dear participants in the 25 African Regional Conference on Education and Skills Development, it's a big pleasure to contribute for the second time to this highly relevant African conference series. As a founder of the Jena Declaration, of which the organizers are a strong project partner, I'm thankful for giving me the opportunity to talk today about education to avoid youth unemployment, lessons from the Jena Declaration. And it's a special honor to deliver this presentation as part of the global education event on quantum science and technology. Youth employment is certainly one of the most significant global issues today. As well as the despair experienced by those affected, there's also a significant loss of talent, which comes at high cost. This loss is not only financial, but also cultural, social, and for many, most of all, personal. There are certainly many reasons for this. In my view, unemployment is primarily caused by a mismatch between local needs and the education system. This topic takes a special significance when addressed in the context of an international year. As the initiator and executive director of the International Year of Global Understanding, based on a specific proclamation by UNESCO, I'm intimately familiar with this issue. This experience informs my presentation today. Putting youth unemployment in the context of the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, as declared by UNESCO, raises for me at least two questions. First, one of the relation between basic science and its practical application. Second, addresses the broader relationship, the one between science and civil society. Let me first share a few thoughts about the relation between basic science and practical application as technology or engineering. Before I turn then to my main topic, the relation between science and civic society in the light of unemployment. The title of the International Year of Quantum Science establishes a direct link between basic science and its application in the form of technology and engineering. This, of course, is a well-defined connection that makes a lot of sense. The same relation is also evident in other academic structured fields of professional occupation. However, in other areas of life that do not follow the social division of labor into scientific disciplines, the situation is quite different. This difference is particularly relevant when discussing youth unemployment. Strengthening educational efforts along disciplinary fields and disciplines to overcome youth unemployment may seem like a reasonable step at first. However, in the face of the biggest challenges humanity is facing today, the situation looks a bit different. For the close relationship between basic science and subsequent engineering to be successful, many preconditions must be met. This includes a highly differentiated production regime that encompasses all levels of research and professional education, as well as highly differentiated labor and product markets that are both vertically and horizontally integrated. If one of these conditions is not met, all efforts to intensify education may not achieve their goal of avoiding unemployment. If the on-site production regime does not correspond with the national educational output, this will most likely not help to reduce youth unemployment, but rather stimulate outward migration and the loss of talent on site. However, if the aforementioned conditions are met, such strategies may be helpful although they still depend on a variety of additional requirements. I cannot go into here right now. Now let's move on to my main topic, the broader relationship between science and civil society regarding youth unemployment and the grand challenges of the present. As I mentioned, I do that on the basis of my experiences with the International Year of Global Understanding and its follow-up project, the Jena Declaration, focusing on the preparatory work for its educational program. For this, we need to take a broader approach, focusing less on the implementation of the current educational system, from primary school up to higher education, and more on turning the question around by asking, how should the educational system be shaped or reshaped to better address the grand challenges that humanity is facing today? And second, how can we enable citizens worldwide to overcome these challenges more successfully? After we found the answer to these two questions, we can then move to the questions what role basic science and engineering can play in this framework. Let's focus now then first on the starting point of the Jena Declaration. I'm referring to it and its starting conditions for preparing answers and proposition to the key topic of this conference. Let me now just go into first into the background of the Jena Declaration and then come to the next or the main points in respect of youth unemployment. Today's educational curricula stem from the area of the establishing of public schooling in the 19th and early 20th century, an area characterized by nation building and nationalism and also imperialism. At the time, it was only natural to view the world through the national or even nationalistic lenses. However, in the age of globalization, affecting nearly all dimensions of human life everywhere, the conditions for the nationalizations of problems have in fact disappeared. We now need a global perspective on local and national issues to overcome global challenges. Education must play a central role in this. That is the outcome of a global survey led by my UNESCO chair and conducted in the year 2020, sponsored by the Canadian Commission for UNESCO and the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. In this survey, we were asking leaders of the UN and UNESCO programs, the Club of Rome, the World Academy of Art and Science, and many other international science organizations, why we are about to miss the 2030 agenda. The answer was quite surprising. In fact, nobody called for more money, but rather for a radical revamp of the curricula of all educational institutions, especially those of higher education. One of the survey's key findings was the lacking in efficiency of all programs. And this because the gap between theoretical and practical problem solving is growing rather than closing globally. Why is this the case? And what impact does it have? In sum, two major trends were identified. One concerning higher education itself, and the other developments in the everyday world across the globe. In higher education, the division of scientific labor by disciplines continues to advance. Specialization in specific fields of study continues to lead to new subdisciplines and crossovers between established disciplines. At the everyday level, we can observe an ever-increasing complexity of problem situations, largely due to the constantly growing impact of globalization on local contexts, such as global climate change. An increasing number of problems are of global nature and multidimensional, encompassing cultural, social, economic, and natural dimensions, among others. This transcends disciplinary, and even interdisciplinary boundaries. To reduce the negative impact of these two diverging trends and improve efficiency of education, an approach is needed that is integrating different disciplines and promotes competences in transdisciplinary cooperation. Let's first look at promoting integrated approaches. Young people often approach pressing problems with a lot of enthusiasm and goodwill to help to solve them, but lose momentum when dealing with them in higher education. The curricula of higher education often suppresses students' natural interest in real-world problems. Instead, students are trained in highly specialized subjects that are often disconnected from the real world, competing with one another in addition. Although the disciplinary approach undoubtedly helps to develop analytical skills and advance specialist knowledge and fundamental research, its limitations become apparent when it is used as a sole basis for developing curricula. The division of the world into different disciplines can prevent learners from adopting other disciplines' perspectives, from discovering connections that would remain hidden from a disciplinary standpoint. Finding solutions to today's wicked global problems requires the ability to analyze across discipline and established categories. To mobilize knowledge in a more integrated way, learning must be pushed beyond disciplinary boundaries. Consequently, more emphasis should be placed on integrated curricula like project-based learning. To this end, higher education needs to become more flexible, moving away from fixed trajectories towards model-based on individual preferences and individual interests and goals. In this regard, Stanford's purpose learning model is a valuable benchmark. However, this can only be the first step. The second step is to promote living labs. The living lab approach enables students and researchers to apply their theoretical knowledge and practical real-world problems. Working alongside local and regional administrations, businesses, non-profit organizations, and other stakeholders, students and researchers can develop collaboration procedures and protocols to co-produce tangible solutions and new knowledges together with the everyday agents. Living labs therefore provide learning contexts for academic and non-academic participants alike. But this, and this is my final point on this topic, calls for specific criteria for awarding theoretical and practical problem-solving capacities. It's about authority and authenticity. Scientific careers are typically associated with an increasing specialization in a person's area of research. Success in the scientific system is linked to expertise that pushes the boundaries of knowledge further and further. This is the basis for a high collegial reputation and for becoming an authority in a field. However, this qualification criteria is not compatible with society's mandates to solve practical problems. The application of the logic of basic research to everyday problem quickly reaches its limits. This is because the link between knowledge and action is missing. Furthermore, science-based authority can hinder cooperative collaboration with everyday stakeholders. Successful cooperation requires the involvement of all stakeholders. The aim is to establish dialogue on equal footing. In short, the transdisciplinary development, implementation of knowledge and expertise can rely solely on scientific authority, but above all on authenticity. The willingness to learn from each other through mutually appreciation exchanges is fundamental to successful transdisciplinary applied research and learning. This is the basic principle proclaimed by the Jena Declaration for revamping curricula at all levels of learning, which emerged from the global survey. What are now the consequences of this key topic of this conference? The role of basic science and technology, including engineering, in respect of youth unemployment in the framework of the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. Of course, its role is changing quite substantially, but it's not losing its relevance, of course. As argued before, it is important to respect first the cultural backgrounds of the key drivers of social transformation, the everyday people, the citizens of the planet. To this, it is of primary necessity to start with the problem constellation as it is present in the everyday world as real-world problem and in everyday phrasing, and not in the thematization in respect of the questions of theoretical findings. From where we can identify the competences of different scientific disciplines to contribute to problem solutions. In short, we are not addressing the problem, first of all, in the horizon of scientific discovery. We are starting with the problem description as it is seen and given by the citizens. And from there, we can decide what discipline can contribute in what respect to the solution of that problem as defined by the citizens. With this, it shall be possible to open the door for civic engagement and keep way open for science from its alienation from the everyday world, and for producing young scientists without having the chance to find an adequate professional position at their doorstep. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
We will take questions from him. If any of us has questions, I can see by hand, and then we can get quick questions from him, and then we can move on to our panel conversation just briefly. No questions for Prof? All right, just one brief one, if the mic will go there, and then we get on to our panel discussion. Isn't it the lady in white? While she readies herself, okay, I think the mic has gotten to her now.
Is it so? Okay.
Yes.
So thank you once again for the talk, Professor. So I especially like the point you mentioned about the link between knowledge and action that is missing because of a lack of collaboration. And I was wondering, or my question is centered about, do you think a shift from competitive to collaborative educational systems and styles will be key to rebranding curriculums that engage students actively with real-world issues through research and scientific discovery? Or is there a main alternative approach you envision when you think of that rebrand?
Right, Prof is with us, and so if you could just answer that question briefly for us. Prof, I think you'd have to unmute, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, now I have the opportunity. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I mean, my main point was, or is, I'm not saying that curricula shouldn't prepare for basic science. That's important. But what we need to do is to give students at all levels the opportunity to choose more their topics, first of all, and secondly, to introduce on all curricula what is called living labs. And now coming back to your question, for the living labs, we need to have the cooperative spirit. We have to understand how citizens are seeing their problems, what they see as potential solutions, and then we have to reflect from the scientific basis what could be the contribution of science to solve the kind of problems that are identified, and not trying to put the logic of scientific division of labor onto everyday life. Coming back to your question, for living labs, we need a cooperative approach among students and with citizens, but of course, for the qualification for scientific careers, the principle of, if you want to call it, competitiveness has to be given, because not all can achieve the goal, and we have to select according to the qualities and the competences of the students. But this shouldn't be the only criteria of qualification.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's Professor Benno Werlen speaking to us as well. That'll bring us to the end of the second presentation and can allow us get into our panel conversation just quickly.